The most dangerous lies are the ones whispered by the person sleeping next to you. He stepped out of the noise of his own celebration, only to find his entire reality shattering in the quiet of the next room. Let's analyze the red flags of a double life and how one man's cold calculation turned a tragedy into a masterclass in justice. Viewer discretion is advised. Educational purpose only. The humidity in Jacksonville hits you like a wet towel the second you step outside, especially in July. But for me, heat was just part of the office furniture. I owned the Rusty Anchor, a dive bar on the edge of town that smelled permanently of hops, peanut shells, and bad decisions. For 10 years, I'd been the first one in to accept the keg deliveries at 6 a.m. and the last one to mop the sticky floors at 2 a.m. I was 40 years old. My back ached constantly, and my hands were rough enough to sand wood. But I loved it. It was mine. My wife, Lisa, did not see it that way. To Lisa, I was just a paycheck that smelled like fryer grease. She was a CPA, a certified public accountant, and she wore that title like a crown. Her world was sterile, air-conditioned, and governed by spreadsheets. While I was wrestling CO2 tanks, she was in her home office, clicking away on an ergonomic keyboard, sipping sparkling water with a slice of lemon. "Charles, reek," she said that morning, not even looking up from her dual monitors as I walked past the open door of her office. I paused, holding a crate of sodas I was moving from the garage to the backyard. "Good morning to you too, honey. Just prepping for the party. You know, the one for the bar's 10th anniversary." She finally turned. Her eyes were cool, analyzing me like I was a tax return that did not quite add up. "I know what it is, Charles. I just hope you're not planning on wearing that shirt when guests arrive. It's embarrassing. The neighbors are already talking about the junk you park in the driveway." She meant my Ford F-150. It was a work truck, scratched and dented, filled with tools and tie-down straps. It was reliable. Unlike the lease on her Mercedes C-Class, which I paid for. "I'll shower, Lisa. Do not worry," I said, suppressing the irritation that was becoming a permanent knot in my chest. "Are you going to help with the setup? I've got 50 pounds of brisket to prep." "I have a client call in 20 minutes, she said, turning her back to me. "Besides, cooking is your thing. I handle the finances, remember? That's the division of labor." I walked away, the crate heavy in my arms. That was our dynamic. I provided the sweat equity, and she provided the management. Or so she claimed. In reality, I worked 16-hour days to fund a lifestyle she felt entitled to. The big house in the suburbs, the granite countertops, the vacations to Napa Valley where she'd complain about the wine service. I loved her. God, I loved her. But lately, it felt like hugging an iceberg. I went out to the backyard. It was a beautiful setup. I'd spent the last month building a new deck specifically for this barbecue. I wanted everything perfect. This was not just a party. It was a milestone. 10 years of keeping a small business alive in an economy that chewed people up. I wanted Lisa to be proud of me. Just once. I started firing up the massive offset smoker. The smell of hickory wood smoke usually calmed me down, but today, my stomach was turning. I had this nagging feeling, a low-level anxiety hum that I could not shake. Maybe it was just the stress of hosting 50 people. Or maybe it was the way Lisa had been guarding her phone lately, placing its screen down on the counter every time I walked into the room. By 2 p.m., the guests started arriving. The Florida sun was blazing, and I was already sweating through my good polo shirt. I stood by the grill, tongs in hand, forcing a smile as friends and employees slapped me on the back. 10 years, Charlie, you did it! Best ribs in Duval County, man. I nodded and thanked them, keeping one eye on the temperature gauge of the smoker and the other on the back door, waiting for Lisa to make her entrance. She finally came out around 3 p.m., wearing a white sundress that cost more than my first car. She looked stunning. Cool, composed, perfect. She floated through the crowd holding a glass of Chardonnay, accepting compliments on our success. She did not come over to the grill. She did not bring me a water. She did not even look at me. She just held court near the cooler, laughing a little too loudly at something someone said. I wiped the sweat from my forehead with a rag and focused on the meat. Keep working, I told myself. That's what you do. You're the provider. You're the rock. But even rocks crack under enough pressure, and the pressure was about to spike. By 5 p.m., the backyard was packed. The hum of conversation was loud, competing with the classic rock playlist I had pumping through the outdoor speakers. The smell of slow-cooked pork and caramelized barbecue sauce hung heavy in the humid air. I was in the zone, flipping burgers for the kids and slicing brisket for the adults. I was essentially trapped behind the grill, isolated by a wall of heat and smoke. And that's when Mark rolled in. Mark was my best friend since high school. We played varsity football together. I was the offensive lineman, the guy who took the hits so others could shine. Mark was the quarterback. And 20 years later, the dynamic had not changed much. He was handsome, charming, and perpetually in between opportunities. He worked in sales, then real estate, then crypto. He drove a flashy car he could not afford and wore a watch that was probably fake. But he had a smile that could sell ice to an Eskimo. "Charlie boy!" Mark shouted, strutting across the lawn with a six-pack of expensive craft beer. "Happy anniversary, brother." "Good to see you, Mark," I said, gripping his hand. His palm was soft, mine was calloused. "Grab a plate. Food's almost ready." "You know I will. You're a wizard with this thing." He gestured to the grill and then lowered his voice. "Hey, look at Lisa. She's glowing today, man. You're a lucky guy." I looked over Mark's shoulder. Lisa was standing by the patio set, and for the first time all day, she looked genuinely happy. But she was not looking at me. She was looking at Mark. Her posture shifted, her spine arching slightly, a subtle display I'd seen 1,000 times when she was trying to be charming. "Yeah," I said, turning back to the ribs so Mark would not see the confusion in my eyes. "She's having a good time." Right behind Mark was Sarah, his wife. Sarah was the complete opposite of Lisa. She was a nurse, overworked and underappreciated, with kind eyes and a patience that bordered on saintly. She was carrying a massive bowl of potato salad she'd made herself. "Hi, Charles," Sarah said, her voice warm. "Where do you want this? And do you need help serving? You look like you're about to melt." "Hey, Sarah, just put it on the main table. And no, you're a guest. Go enjoy yourself." "Nonsense," she said, setting the bowl down and immediately grabbing a stack of paper plates. "You've been cooking for days. Let me help you plate up." For the next hour, it was just me and Sarah working the food line. We fell into an easy rhythm. She was chatting about her kids, asking about the bar, actually listening to my answers. It was such a stark contrast to the icy silence I got from Lisa. Meanwhile, I kept glancing over at the patio. Lisa was on her third or fourth glass of wine. Usually, she was a control freak about her intake, terrified of losing her composure or looking bloated. But tonight, she was loose. Her cheeks were flushed. She was standing in a tight circle with Mark and a few of my employees. Mark was telling a story, using big hand gestures, taking up space. Lisa was laughing, that high, tinkling laugh she used when she wanted to impress someone. She put a hand on Mark's shoulder to steady herself as she laughed. She left it there a second too long. My gut twisted. It was not jealousy, exactly. It was suspicion. Mark was my best friend. He'd borrowed money from me 2 months ago to cover his mortgage. I knew he was a flirt, but he would not cross that line. Not with me. "Charles?" Sarah's voice snapped me back. "The buns? We're out of buns." "Oh, right. Sorry," I stammered, shaking my head. "I think there's another bag in the pantry inside." "I can get them," Sarah offered. "No, stay here. Manage the hungry mob. I need a second out of this smoke anyway," I said. I wiped my hands on my apron and stepped away from the grill. The sun was starting to dip lower, casting long, orange shadows across the yard. The party was reaching that peak volume where everyone is shouting to be heard. I did not walk through the sliding glass doors into the living room where the crowd was spilling in and out. Instead, I went around the side of the house to the utility entrance, through the garage. It was a shortcut to the pantry, and honestly, I just wanted 30 seconds of silence in the cool air conditioning. I walked into the garage, hitting the button to close the garage door behind me to shut out the noise. It was dark and quiet. I opened the door from the garage into the laundry room, which connected to the kitchen hallway. The laundry room was dim, lit only by the faint light spilling from the hallway. And then I saw them. Time did not stop. That's a cliché people use in movies. Time actually sped up, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs like a trapped bird. They were in the corner of the laundry room, pushed up against the washing machine. The dryer was running, tumbling towels, creating a rhythmic thumping sound that masked their movements. It was Lisa and Mark. Lisa's back was to me. Mark was facing her, his hands gripping her waist, pulling her hips into his. They were kissing, not a quick, drunken peck, but a hungry, desperate mauling. It was wet and aggressive. Lisa's fingers were tangled in Mark's hair, messing up his perfect gelled style. I stood in the doorway, paralyzed. The bag of hamburger buns I had come for felt like a distant memory. The smell of Tide detergent mixed with Mark's expensive cologne and the scent of Lisa's floral perfume, a scent I bought her for Christmas, created a nauseating cocktail. Mark pulled back slightly, breathless. He did not see me in the shadows of the garage door. He looked down at my wife with a smirk that made my blood boil. "God, you're tense," Mark whispered. His voice was husky. "You need to relax, Lise." "I can't not," Lisa murmured, her voice dripping with a vulnerability she never showed me. "He's everywhere. It's exhausting." "Who? Charles?" Mark chuckled, a low, cruel sound. "Do not worry about him. He's outside playing servant, flippin' burgers like the hired help. That's all he is, really." My fists clenched at my sides. My fingernails dug into my palm so hard I felt the skin break. The hired help. My best friend. The man I'd loaned $5,000 to keep his lights on. "He's so boring, Mark," Lisa sighed, leaning her forehead against his chest. "He comes home. He smells like beer. He talks about inventory costs. There's no spark, no ambition, just work." "That's why you have me," Mark said, running a hand down her back, over the silk of her dress. "To give you what you actually need." "I'm only with him for the stability," Lisa confessed, and those words hit me harder than a physical punch. "The bar makes decent money now. If I leave, it's messy. But God, I need this. I need you." They leaned in again. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to charge. I was a big guy. I moved kegs for a living. I could tear Mark apart before he even knew I was there. I wanted to drag them both out into the backyard and scream the truth to everyone holding a paper plate. I wanted to shatter the facade. But then, The business owner took over. You do not fire an employee in a rage. You build a paper trail. You document the cause. In my line of work, you see everything. You see fights start over nothing. You see people make mistakes. And you learn that if you react emotionally, you lose. If you throw the first punch, you get sued. You have to be cold. You have to be calculated. I quietly pulled my phone from my pocket. My hands were shaking, but I forced them to still. I raised the phone. The lighting was low, but the night mode on the camera was good. Click. I took 3 photos in rapid succession. One of the kiss, one of his hand up her dress, one of their faces close together. They were so absorbed in their betrayal, they did not hear a thing over the rumble of the dryer and the muffled bass of the music outside. I lowered the phone and slipped it back into my pocket. It felt heavy now, like I was carrying a grenade. I did not confront them. Not yet. Confrontation now would just be a drunken scene. Lisa would deny it, call me crazy, or blame the alcohol. Mark would try to laugh it off. No, I needed something permanent. I backed out of the laundry room, stepping silently into the garage. I closed the door softly. I stood there in the dark for a full minute, breathing in the smell of gasoline and dust, letting the rage crystallize into something sharp and icy. I grabbed a bag of buns from the shelf in the garage. I remembered there was an extra pack there, and walked back out the way I came, around the side of the house. The heat hit me again, but this time, I did not feel it. I felt cold, freezing cold. Walking back into the party felt like stepping onto an alien planet. The music sounded distorted, the laughter grotesque. I saw my friends, my neighbors, people I'd known for years, but I felt completely detached. I walked back to the grill. Sarah was still there, serving potato salad to a neighbor's kid. She looked up and smiled. "Found them," she said, pointing to the buns in my hand. "Everything okay? You look pale, Charles." I looked at this woman, this kind, loyal woman who was currently being made a fool of inside my laundry room. I felt a surge of protectiveness over her, and a wave of pity. "Yeah," I lied, my voice sounding raspy. "Just the heat. Need to hydrate." I tore open the bag of buns and started arranging them on the tray. My movements were mechanical. Bun, burger, cheese, plate. I did it on autopilot. My mind was racing, replaying the image of Mark's hand on my wife. I'm only with him for the stability. About 10 minutes later, the sliding glass door opened. Mark strolled out first. He had grabbed a fresh beer from the kitchen and was high-fiving someone. He looked relaxed, the cat that got the cream. Lisa followed a minute later. She had fixed her hair and reapplied her lipstick. She walked over to a group of her girlfriends, blending seamlessly back into the role of the perfect hostess. The audacity of it was breathtaking. They were sociopaths. I watched Lisa sip her wine. She caught my eye across the yard. She did not smile. She just raised her eyebrows slightly, as if to say, "Why are you not serving faster?" I looked down at the flames of the grill. I remembered the day we signed our prenup. It was 15 years ago. Before the bar was a success, before the house. I was just starting out, taking a massive loan to buy the rusty anchor. Lisa was already moving up in her firm. She had sat me down at our tiny kitchen table in our first apartment. She had a folder. "Charles," she had said, her voice strictly business. "This business of yours, it's high risk. Statistics say 80% of bars fail in the first year. I cannot let your potential bankruptcy drag down my credit score or my assets. We need a prenuptial agreement to keep our finances separate." I was hurt back then. I thought marriage was about sharing everything. but I signed it. I signed it to prove I loved her and to prove I would not fail. But Lisa, being the thorough accountant she is, had insisted on a morality clause, specifically an infidelity clause. At the time, she was paranoid that I, the bartender surrounded by drunk college girls, would cheat on her. Clause 4.2. In the event of marital dissolution due to proven infidelity, the offending party forfeits all claims to marital assets acquired during the union and waives all rights to spousal support. She wrote it to put a leash on me. She thought she was protecting her accountant's salary from a broke bartender. She never imagined that 10 years later, my bar would be a gold mine, sitting on prime real estate, while her salary had plateaued. And she certainly never imagined she'd be the one breaking the clause. A dark, grim satisfaction settled in my chest. The rest of the night was a blur. I played the part, I smiled. I made a toast to 10 years of business. I even clinked glasses with Mark when he came over to congratulate me again, looking me right in the eye with that lying grin. "To friendship," Mark said. "To the truth," I replied. He frowned slightly, confused, but drank anyway. When the last guest left around midnight, the yard was a mess of trash and empty cans. Sarah had tried to stay and help clean, but Mark dragged her away, saying he was tired. Lisa went straight upstairs. "I have a headache," she announced. "Clean this up, Charles. I'm going to bed." "Go ahead," I said, popping the top on a beer, my first of the night. "I've got some work to do." I sat on the edge of the deck in the dark, surrounded by the wreckage of the party. I pulled up the photos on my phone. They were clear, undeniable. I was not just losing a wife. I was excising a tumor. The next morning, the house was silent. The hangover from the emotional trauma was worse than any alcohol-induced headache I'd ever had. I had not slept. I'd spent the night in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, formulating the timeline. I heard Lisa stirring around 10 a.m. She shuffled into the kitchen, wearing her silk robe, looking rough. The wine had taken its toll. "Charles," she croaked, shielding her eyes from the sunlight streaming through the blinds. "Coffee and Advil. My head is splitting." She sat at the island, waiting to be served, just like always. I was already dressed, boots laced, keys in hand. "Coffee's in the pot," I said, walking past her. "Get it yourself." She blinked, stunned. "Excuse me?" "I'm going to the bar. Inventory," I said flatly. "On Sunday?" she snapped. "We have to clean the house." "You have to clean the house," I corrected her. "I cleaned the yard last night while you were sleeping off the Chardonnay." Before she could wind up for a fight, I walked out the door. The sound of the heavy oak door slamming shut felt like the period at the end of a long, bad sentence. I did not go to the bar. I drove to a diner on the other side of town, the Sunrise Skillet. It was a place Mark would never be caught dead in, too greasy, not trendy enough. I had texted Sarah at 7 a.m. "Need to talk to you, urgent, about Mark. Meet me at Sunrise Skillet at 10:30. Do not tell him." She was sitting in a booth in the back when I arrived. She looked worried, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea. When she saw me, her face fell. "Charles? Is everything okay? Is Mark hurt?" I slid into the booth opposite her. I felt like an executioner. I hated hurting her. She was collateral damage in Lisa and Mark's selfishness. "Mark is physically fine, Sarah," I said gently. "But we have a problem." "What kind of problem? Is it gambling again? Did he borrow money?" "I wish it was that," I said. I took a deep breath. "Sarah, you know I consider you a friend. I would not do this unless I was absolutely sure. I unlocked my phone and slid it across the table. Sarah looked down. She stared at the screen for a long time. I watched her face crumble. The denial, the shock, the realization, and finally, the devastation. Her hand flew to her mouth to stifle a sob. "At the party?" she whispered, tears spilling over instantly. While I was helping you serve food?" "In the laundry room," I confirmed. "I heard them, Sarah. They talked about us. Mark called me the hired help, and Lisa..." I paused, deciding to spare her the details of what they said about Mark's skills. "Lisa is done. I'm filing for divorce today." Sarah looked up, her eyes red and fierce. The sadness was rapidly turning into rage. "He told me he was helping you move kegs when he disappeared. He came home and told me how pathetic you looked." "Yeah, that sounds like him," I said. Sarah wiped her face with a napkin. She straightened her posture. "The lease on his car is in my name. The apartment is in my name. His credit is shot, Charles. He has nothing without me." "Lisa thinks she's going to take half my bar," I told her. "But we have a prenup, an infidelity clause. She's going to walk away with nothing but her clothes." Sarah reached across the table and took my hand. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "When are you telling her?" "Tonight," I said. "Okay." Sarah nodded, a scary calm settling over her. "Text me when you do. I want Mark to be home when I throw his shit on the lawn. I want him to think he's safe until the exact moment his world ends." We sat there for a moment, two people united by betrayal, plotting the demise of our former lives. "Let's burn it down, Charles," she said. I spent the afternoon at the bar, actually doing work. I needed the noise, the smell of bleach, the routine. I met with my lawyer, a regular at the bar named Saul, who had been waiting for years for me to dump the Ice Queen. He drafted the papers in record time. We attached the photos as Exhibit A. I drove home at 6 p.m. The sun was setting, painting the sky in bruises of purple and red. When I walked in, the house was clean. Lisa was sitting at the dining room table, laptop open, piles of receipts around her. She was back in accountant mode. "You're finally back," she said without looking up. "We need to talk about the budget for next month. You spent way too much on that meat yesterday. The margins are going to be..." I tossed the large manila envelope onto the table. It slid across the polished wood and hit her laptop. She stopped typing. She looked at the envelope, then at me. "What is this?" "Read it," I said, leaning against the doorframe, crossing my arms. She opened the envelope with an annoyed sigh. She pulled out the document. Her eyes scanned the header. "Petition for dissolution of marriage." She laughed. She actually laughed. It was a cold, incredulous sound. "Divorce? Seriously, Charles? Is this about the cleaning, or are you having a midlife crisis?" She tossed the papers down. "You can be serious. You depend on me. You do not know how to file a tax return properly." "I hired a new accountant today," I said calmly, "and I'm very serious." Lisa stood up, her face flushing with anger. "Fine. You want to play hardball? Let's play. I'll destroy you. I know every dime that bar makes. I'll take half the business. I'll take the house. I'll take your truck just to spite you. You'll be living in a cardboard box by the time I'm done." "No," I said softly. "I do not think you will." "You think you're smart?" she sneered. "I'm the one with the degree, Charles. I know the law." Then you should remember the contract you made me sign, I said. Clause 4.2. Lisa froze. Her arrogance flickered for a second. What? The infidelity clause, I clarified. The one that says if you cheat, you get 0. Nada. Zilch. She stared at me, her eyes narrowing. You have to prove it, you idiot. You can't just say I cheated. It's hearsay. Turn the page, Lisa. She looked down at the documents. She flipped the first page. There, printed in high-resolution color, were the photos. Lisa and Mark. The kiss. The hand. The undeniable intimacy. The color drained from her face so fast I thought she was going to faint. She dropped the paper as if it were burning hot. Charles, Her voice trembled. The Ice Queen was melting into a puddle of panic. This is not what it looks like. We were just drunk. It was a mistake. One time. The conversation was not a mistake, I said, my voice hard as steel. I heard you, Lisa. Boring. Stability. Hired help. She gaped at me, mouth opening and closing like a fish. I'm keeping the house, I continued, listing the terms. I'm keeping the bar. You have 48 hours to vacate the premises. You can take your clothes and your personal items. I'm surrendering the vehicle to the dealership. I'll eat the early termination fee. It's cheaper than keeping you. Hope you like taking the bus. You cannot do this to me, she shrieked, tears starting to flow. I built this life. I managed your money. You managed my money, I corrected. And now you're fired. Just then, her phone on the table started buzzing. It was Mark. She looked at it, terrified. Answer it, I said. I bet he's having a bad night, too. She picked it up with shaking hands. Mark? I could hear Mark shouting on the other end, his voice tinny and panicked. Sarah knows. She knows everything. She locked me out. She canceled my cards. Lisa, you have to help me. I have nowhere to go. Lisa looked at me. I looked at her. Tell him to come pick you up, I said coldly. Oh, wait. He does not have a car anymore. I turned around and walked toward the bedroom to pack a bag. I was not staying there tonight. I was going to a hotel. I wanted the house to be empty when I came back. Charles, please, she begged, chasing after me, grabbing my arm. We can fix this. 25 years, Charles. Does not that mean anything? I looked at her hand on my arm, the same hand that was all over my best friend yesterday. It meant everything to me, I said, pulling my arm away. But apparently, it was just stability to you. 3 months later. The autumn air in Jacksonville was actually pleasant. Less humidity, a slight breeze coming off the St. Johns River. I was standing on the newly renovated deck of the Rusty Anchor. We had just expanded the patio seating. The place was packed. It was a Friday night, and the energy was electric. I was not behind the grill tonight. I had hired a pitmaster, a young kid named Diego who had a passion for smoke that reminded me of myself 20 years ago. I was walking the floor, shaking hands, checking on tables. Hey, boss, one of the regulars yelled. Place looks amazing. Thanks, Mike, I waved. It felt lighter. My life felt lighter. Without Lisa constantly criticizing my expenses, I had reinvested in the bar. I updated the sound system, fixed the bathrooms, and launched a new marketing campaign. Revenue was up 30%. Turns out, when you do not have a spouse draining your confidence and your bank account, you can get a lot done. I walked over to the bar to grab a soda. Sarah was sitting there, nursing a white wine. We had stayed in touch. We were not dating. That would be too weird, too soon. But we were friends. Trauma bonds are strong. "How is he?" I asked, leaning against the bar. Sarah smirked. She looked younger, less stressed. "He's living in his mom's basement in Orlando, selling solar panels door to door. He calls me once a week begging to come back. I blocked his number yesterday." "Good for you," I nodded. "And her?" Sarah asked. I took a sip of my soda. "My lawyer says she's living in a studio apartment on the north side, working for a tax prep chain, one of those pop-up places in a strip mall. She tried to contest the prenup again last week. The judge laughed her out of court. I felt a pang of sadness, but it was distant now, like a scar that had healed over. I missed the idea of Lisa, the woman I thought she was, but I did not miss the reality of her. I did not miss the coldness. I did not miss being made to feel small in my own home. "You know," Sarah said, tracing the rim of her glass, "you were never boring, Charles. You were just steady. Some people are too stupid to know the difference between steady and boring." "I'm learning that," I smiled. A group of college kids walked in, laughing, filling the space with noise. The jukebox switched to a classic Tom Petty song. The smell of burgers and beer filled the air. This was my kingdom. I built it with my own hands. I looked around at the bar, at my friends, at the life I had reclaimed. Lisa had wanted a hero. She wanted a flashy quarterback like Mark. But in the end, the quarterback fumbled the ball, and the accountant lost count. And the guy who cleans the kegs? He was the only one left standing. "Next round is on the house," I shouted to the bar. A cheer went up. I raised my glass. I was free. The protagonist's victory was not luck. It was preparation meeting opportunity. First, never equate boring stability with weakness. If your partner mocks your grind, they are not your teammate. They are a parasite. Second, legal safeguards like a prenuptial agreement are not about a lack of trust, but about protecting your future self from life's unpredictability. Finally, when the mask slips, do not react with emotion. React with documentation. Drop a comment. Would you have confronted them immediately or waited like he did? Subscribe for more honest case studies.